Ethan Carter opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the dim light of the room. His head throbbed and his body felt heavy, like he had been asleep for far too long. As his vision cleared, he realized he wasn't in a hospital or any place familiar. Instead, he lay on a narrow cot inside what looked like an old storage room. The walls were made of rough concrete, patched with rusted metal plates. Faint glowing symbols etched into the walls caught his attention. They pulsed softly as if alive. "Ethan?" A voice called from somewhere nearby. It was soft but urgent. He turned his head toward the sound and saw Clara Hayes standing by the door. She wore a dirty jacket over a faded t-shirt, her hands smeared with grease. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her face showed signs of exhaustion. But there was relief in her brown eyes when she noticed he was awake. "You're finally up," Clara said, stepping closer. "How do you feel?" Ethereal pain shot through Ethan's chest as he tried to sit up. He groaned and leaned back against the wall behind him. "Like I got hit by a truck," he muttered, rubbing his temples. Memories came flooding back, running, through crumbling streets, explosions shaking the ground beneath his feet, and then nothing. What happened? Where are we? Clara sighed and pulled up a chair beside the cot. "You've been out for months, Ethan. We barely managed to drag you here after the attack. You took a bad fall during the last fight with the Curators." The Curators. Ethan repeated the name under his breath. Just hearing it sent chills down his spine. They were strange beings, neither fully organic nor mechanical, who had arrived on Earth years ago. At first they seemed peaceful, even helpful, offering advanced technology and solutions to humanity's problems. But soon, their true intentions became clear. They didn't want to help humans. They wanted to reshape them, to correct what they saw as flaws in humanity's design. Ethan remembered fragments of the battle, their forces overwhelmed, his team scattered, and then darkness. He looked at Clara, searching for answers. "Months? How did we survive this long, and where exactly is here?" Clara hesitated before answering. "We're underground, in an old facility beneath what used to be Chicago. It's one of the few places still safe from the Curators' terraforming machines. For now, anyway." Ethan frowned. Terraforming. That was the word people used to describe how the Curators were changing Earth. Alien plants sprouted everywhere, choking out native vegetation. Rivers turned strange colors, and entire cities were swallowed by bizarre structures that defied logic. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, forced to hide in whatever shelters they could find. But something about this place felt different. Ethan glanced at the glowing symbols again. They weren't just random carvings, they seemed to shift slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if watching him. "Where did those come from?" he asked, pointing at the wall. Clara followed his gaze. "They started appearing after we activated that device you found, remember? The one buried deep in the ruins outside the city." Ethan nodded slowly. He did remember. During their desperate escape, they stumbled upon an artifact unlike anything they'd seen before. It was sleek and black, shaped like a sphere with intricate patterns etched into its surface. When they touched it, the world around them changed. Visions of Earth's past and future flooded their minds. Then everything went wrong. The Curators attacked, and they barely escaped with their lives. "We brought it here," Clara continued. "It seemed important, maybe even dangerous, but ever since we turned it on, these symbols have been showing up everywhere. I think they might be connected to the Curators somehow." Ethan swung his legs off the cot, ignoring the wave of dizziness that followed. He needed to see this device for himself. "Take me to it," he said firmly. Clara hesitated. "Are you sure you're ready? You've been unconscious for a long time. Your body needs rest." "I don't have time to rest," Ethan replied, his voice low but firm. "If those symbols are linked to the Curators, we need to figure out why. Every second counts." Reluctantly, Clara helped him stand. His legs wobbled, but he steadied himself against the wall. Together they walked down a narrow corridor lit by flickering fluorescent lights. The air smelled damp, and the hum of generators echoed in the background. Along the way, they passed several rooms filled with makeshift beds and huddled figures. These were the survivors, men, women, and children who had sought refuge in this hidden bunker. As they moved deeper into the facility, Ethan noticed tension in the air. People whispered nervously as they passed, casting wary glances at him. Some looked hopeful, others fearful. Clearly, news of his awakening had spread, and opinions about his return were divided. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the complex. In the center stood the device, an ominous black sphere suspended above a pedestal. Thin tendrils of light snaked across its surface, connecting it to the glowing symbols carved into the walls. The sight sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. "What have you learned so far?" he asked, studying the sphere. Clara shrugged. "Not much. The symbols seem to respond to certain frequencies, but we can't decode them. It's like they're communicating in a language we don't understand." Ethan reached out tentatively, brushing his fingers against the sphere. Instantly, the room grew colder, and the symbols flared brighter. Images flashed in his mind, scenes of ancient civilizations, rising and falling of Earth covered in lush forests and vast oceans. Then came darker visions, cities burning, skies choked with ash, and shadowy figures reshaping the planet according to some incomprehensible plan. He pulled his hand away quickly, gasping for breath. This thing, it's more than just a tool. It's a key, a map to understanding the Curators. Before Clara could respond, the sound of raised voices interrupted them. They turned to see two groups of people arguing near the entrance of the chamber. One side was led by Rachel Morgan, a fiery survivalist with short blonde hair and sharp features. The other consisted of quieter individuals, including Grace Miller, a former teacher with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. "You can't keep us locked away like prisoners," Rachel shouted, gesturing angrily. "We need to fight back." Sitting here doing nothing is suicide. Grace stepped forward, her tone measured but firm. "Fighting won't solve anything, Rachel. The Curators are too powerful. If we act rashly, we'll only make things worse." Rachel scoffed. "And waiting around for them to finish their little project is better? Look at what they've done to our world. We should be preparing to strike, not cowering in fear." The argument escalated, drawing the attention of others in the facility. Ethan exchanged a glance with Clara, both of them sensing the growing unrest. This was exactly what he had feared, factionalism threatening to tear the group apart. Stepping forward, Ethan raised his hands to quiet the crowd. "Enough!" His voice cut through the noise, silencing everyone. "Arguing among ourselves won't save us. We need to focus on finding a solution, not tearing each other down." Rachel narrowed her eyes at him. "A solution? Like what? Hiding in this hole while the Curators take over the rest of the planet? Or maybe you think your fancy artifact will magically fix everything?" "It's not about magic," Ethan replied, keeping his tone steady. "But if we rush into action, without understanding what we're dealing with, we'll lose. That device holds answers we need to uncover before we decide our next move." Rachel crossed her arms, unconvinced. "And how long will that take? Days? Weeks? By then, it might already be too late." Grace spoke up, her voice gentle, but resolute. "Rushing blindly into battle isn't the answer either. Violence hasn't worked so far. Maybe it's time to try something else." The tension in the room remained palpable, but for now the argument subsided. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Divisions within the group would continue to grow unless he found a way to unite them, or at least give them hope. As the crowd dispersed, Clara leaned close to him. "You handled that well," she said quietly. "But Rachel's not going to stay quiet for long. She's gathering followers and they're getting restless." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. "Then we'll have to work faster. Whatever secrets this device holds, we need to unlock them before it's too late." Together, they returned their attention to the sphere, its tendrils of light pulsing faintly in the dim chamber. Somewhere, within its depths lay the key to humanity's survival, or perhaps its doom. The next morning, Ethan woke with a sense of urgency gnawing at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping through their fingers. The glowing symbols on the walls seemed to watch him, their faint light pulsing like a heartbeat. Clara had spent the night studying the sphere, but she hadn't uncovered anything new. They needed more answers, and staying cooped up in the facility wasn't going to get them. Ethan found Clara in the chamber where the sphere rested. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scattered notes and diagrams. Her face lit up when she saw him approach. "I think I've found something," she said, holding up one of her sketches. It showed a series of interconnecting lines and dots resembling a map. "What is it?" Ethan asked, crouching beside her. "It's a pattern," Clara explained. "The symbols seem to correspond to specific locations outside the facility. If we follow them, they might lead us to something important." Ethan studied the drawing carefully. "You think these places are connected to the Curators?" Clara nodded. "It's possible. Maybe they're part of whatever system the Curators use to control their terraforming machines. If we can figure out how it works, we might be able to disrupt it." Ethan stood, his mind racing. "Then we need to check it out. But we can't do this alone." Clara hesitated. "Rachel won't approve. She'll see it as a waste of resources, or worse, a distraction from her plans." "We'll deal with Rachel later," Ethan said firmly. "Right now we need someone who knows the terrain, someone who can help us navigate safely." Liam Dawson was the obvious choice. A former scout for the military, Liam had an uncanny ability to move unseen through the alien-infested ruins above ground. He was tall and lean, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes that always seemed to notice things others missed. When Ethan and Clara approached him, he listened quietly, chewing on a piece of dried jerky. "You want me to guide you into the wasteland based on some glowing doodles?" Liam asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sounds risky." "It's necessary," Ethan replied. "If those symbols mean what we think they do, they could give us an edge against the Curators. We need to know for sure." Liam sighed and glanced at the map Clara had drawn. "All right, I'm in. But if we run into trouble, don't expect me to play hero. My job is to keep us alive, not pick fights." With Liam on board, the trio prepared for their journey. They packed light, just enough food, water, and medical supplies to last a few days. Weapons were limited to knives and a single shotgun, which Liam insisted on carrying. As they left the facility, the air grew colder, and the sky above was a dull gray. Alien plants stretched toward the clouds, their twisted forms casting eerie shadows on the ground. Their first destination was an old library located several miles away. According to Clara's calculations, the symbols led directly to it. The building was half buried under rubble, its once grand facade now cracked and crumbling. Inside, books lay scattered across the floor, their pages brittle with age. But one book stood out, a thick tome bound in black leather, its cover etched with the same glowing symbols they'd seen in the facility. Ethan picked it up cautiously. The moment his fingers touched the cover, the room seemed to shift. The air grew heavier, and the symbols began to glow brighter. Visions flooded his mind, images of Earth's past and future colliding in a chaotic swirl. He saw himself leading humanity in rebellion against the Curators, standing atop a battlefield littered with both human and alien bodies. The victory came at a terrible cost, leaving the planet scarred and broken. Ethan dropped the book, gasping for breath. Clara rushed to his side, concern etched on her face. "What did you see?" she asked. "Too much," Ethan muttered, rubbing his temples. "This thing, it's not just a book. It's showing me possibilities, outcomes. Some good, most bad." Liam frowned, picking up the book and examining it. "So what, this is like a crystal ball or something?" "More like a warning," Ethan said. "It's trying to tell us something about the Curator's plans, but also about our choices. Every decision we make shapes the future." Clara took the book from Liam and flipped through its pages. Unlike normal books, the text shifted constantly, changing languages mid-sentence. Human words mingled with alien script, forming sentences that made no sense unless read aloud. She tried reading a line softly, and the symbols on the walls of the library flared in response. "This isn't just information," Clara said, her voice tinged with awe. It's alive, connected somehow to the curators and maybe even to the artifact back at the facility. As they debated what to do next, a low rumble shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling and the sound of movement echoed outside. Liam moved quickly to a shattered window, peering out cautiously. "We've got company," he whispered. Through the haze of alien vegetation, shadowy figures emerged. Curator drones, sleek and insect-like, their movements fluid and unnatural. Their presence sent a chill down Ethan's spine. The curators rarely ventured this far underground unless provoked. "They must have tracked us here," Clara said, gripping her knife tightly. "Or maybe they sensed the book," Ethan added grimly. "Either way, we need to move. Now." Liam nodded, already heading for the back exit. "Stick close and stay quiet. These things aren't smart, but they're persistent." They slipped out of the library, moving swiftly through the ruins. The drones followed, their metallic limbs clicking against the debris. Ethan kept the book tucked under his arm, its weight strangely comforting despite the danger it brought. He knew they couldn't let the curators take it, not without understanding its secrets first. After hours of evading pursuit, they finally reached a temporary hiding spot, an abandoned subway station buried beneath layers of alien growth. Exhausted, they collapsed onto the cold floor, listening for any sign of pursuit. For now, they were safe. Clara opened the book again, her hands trembling slightly. "There has to be a way to decode this," she murmured. "If we can understand what it's saying, maybe we can find a weakness in the curator's system." Ethan leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes. "And maybe we'll find out why they're doing this, why they think humanity needs fixing." Liam watched them silently, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "You two really believe we can stop them? That we can fight back and win?" Ethan looked at him, his gaze unwavering. "I don't know, but I do know one thing. We can't give up. Not yet." As the hours passed, Clara continued working on the book, scribbling notes and testing theories. Ethan paced restlessly, his thoughts consumed by the visions he'd seen. Each possibility weighed heavily on him. The lives lost, the sacrifices required. But amidst the chaos, one truth became clear. Humanity's survival depended on their ability to adapt, to rise above fear and division. When they emerged from the subway station the next day, the world felt different. The alien flora seemed brighter, almost defiant, as though mocking their efforts. Yet Ethan carried the book with renewed determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Back at the facility, tension simmered below the surface. Rachel and her followers had grown bolder, stockpiling weapons and planning raids on neighboring settlements. Grace and her group remained steadfast in their belief that diplomacy was the only path forward. And Ethan? He stood at the center of it all, burdened by the knowledge that every choice he made could tip the balance between hope and despair. That night, as Ethan stared at the glowing symbols on the walls, he realized something crucial. The curators weren't just reshaping Earth. They were reshaping humanity itself. Whether through violence, fear, or unity, the survivors would emerge changed. The question was, what kind of future would they choose to create? For now, the answer lay hidden within the pages of the book. The return to the facility was anything but smooth. Ethan, Clara, and Liam had barely made it back without being spotted by the curator drones that seemed to multiply with every passing day. The alien machines were relentless, their movements precise and calculated as if driven by a singular purpose. By the time they reached the safety of the underground bunker, exhaustion clung to them like a second skin. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Rumors of their expedition had already spread, fueled by Rachel Morgan's growing distrust of Ethan's leadership. She stood near the main chamber, arms crossed, her piercing blue eyes narrowing as Ethan entered with the black book tucked under his arm. Her followers, grim-faced men and women armed with makeshift weapons, gathered behind her, their posture defensive and hostile. "You disappear for days, come back with some glowing relic, and expect us to just trust you?" Rachel demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. What is that thing, Ethan? Another one of your mysteries we're supposed to wait around for? Ethan stopped in his tracks, meeting her gaze with equal intensity. He could feel the weight of the book in his hands, its presence both comforting and ominous. It's not a relic, he replied calmly, though his heart pounded in his chest. It's a tool, a way to understand the Curators. If we can decode it, we might find a way to stop them. Rachel scoffed, stepping closer. Stop them? Or waste more time while they take over what's left of our world? We don't need riddles and visions. We need action, weapons, supplies, something real. Grace Miller stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. Rushing into battle won't solve anything, Rachel. Violence hasn't worked so far. Maybe this book holds answers we haven't thought of yet. Rachel spun on her heel, glaring at Grace. Answers won't save us when those monsters are tearing apart cities above ground. Sitting here decoding symbols isn't going to protect anyone. The argument escalated quickly, drawing the attention of other survivors scattered throughout the facility. Some sided with Rachel, shouting demands for immediate action. Others gravitated toward Grace, pleading for patience and caution. The divide between the two factions grew wider, the air thick with anger and fear. Ethan raised his hands, trying to quiet the crowd. "Listen to me," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Fighting among ourselves won't help anyone. If we want to survive, we need to work together, not tear each other apart." His words did little to calm the tension. Rachel's expression hardened, her jaw tightening as she studied him. "You've had your chance, Ethan," she said coldly. "But sitting around waiting for miracles hasn't gotten us anywhere. It's time for a change." Before Ethan could respond, Clara stepped forward, clutching the book tightly. "If you think taking charge will fix things, then fine," she snapped, surprising everyone with her boldness. "But you'll have to go through us first. This book is too important to throw away because you're impatient." Rachel hesitated, glancing at the book and then back at Clara. For a moment it seemed like she might relent, but instead her lips curled into a sneer. "Fine, keep your secrets, but don't expect my people to follow you anymore." With that, she turned and stormed off, her followers trailing behind her. The remaining survivors exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to do next. Ethan sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "That could have gone better," he muttered. Clara placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't let her get to you. We knew this was coming. What matters now is figuring out how to use the book before it's too late." Liam leaned against the wall, arms folded. "She's not wrong about one thing. The Curators aren't slowing down. Every day we spend hiding underground gives them more time to reshape the planet. If we don't act soon, there won't be anything left to fight for." Ethan nodded grimly. "Then we need to focus. Clara, keep working on the book. See if you can make sense of those shifting texts. Liam, I need you to scout the surface again. Look for signs of the Curators' nodes or any weak points in their system, and I'll try to hold things together down here." Over the next few days, the facility buzzed with activity. Clara pored over the book, her notes piling up as she deciphered fragments of its cryptic language. The symbols responded to her touch, glowing brighter whenever she traced them with her fingers. Slowly, patterns began to emerge, references to specific locations across Earth tied to what appeared to be control hubs for the Curators' terraforming network. Meanwhile, Liam ventured outside, navigating the alien-infested ruins with practiced ease. He returned with troubling news. The Curators were expanding their operations faster than ever. Entire regions had been transformed into unrecognizable landscapes, dominated by towering structures that pulsed with energy. In some areas, human settlements had been completely erased, replaced by strange biomechanical constructs. Back at the facility, Ethan struggled to maintain order. Rachel's faction had withdrawn to a separate section of the bunker, refusing to cooperate with the rest of the group. Supplies were dwindling and tempers flared as arguments broke out over rationing. Despite his best efforts, Ethan couldn't bridge the gap between the two sides. The fracture in the community deepened, threatening to unravel everything they'd built. One evening, as Ethan sat alone in the dimly lit chamber housing the sphere, Clara joined him. She carried a stack of papers filled with her findings. "I think I found something big," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "The book mentions an enclave, a place untouched by the Curators, a sanctuary where humans still live free from their influence." Ethan straightened, his interest piqued. "Where is it?" "That's the problem," Clara admitted. "The description is vague. It talks about a hidden valley surrounded by mountains, but the exact location isn't clear. Still, if we can find it, it could be our best chance at survival." Ethan frowned, considering the implications. "Even if it exists, getting there won't be easy. The Curators have eyes everywhere, and with Rachel's group turning against us, we don't have the numbers to mount a rescue mission. Which is why we'll need Liam's help," Clara said firmly. "He's the only one who knows the terrain well enough to guide us." When Liam heard the plan, he didn't hesitate. "If this enclave is real, it changes everything," he said. "But we'll need to move fast. The longer we wait, the harder it'll be to slip past the Curators." As preparations began, Ethan faced another challenge, convincing the others to join them. Many were reluctant, fearing the risks outweighed the rewards. Even Grace, usually supportive, expressed doubts. "What if this is a trap?" she asked. "What if the Curators are luring us into a false hope?" "It's a risk we have to take," Ethan replied. "Staying here isn't an option. Sooner or later, the Curators will find us. At least this way, we have a chance." In the end, a small team volunteered to accompany Ethan, Clara, and Liam on the mission. Among them were a few skilled fighters, a medic named Anna, and a young engineer named Ben, who had experience repairing old tech. Together they gathered supplies and plotted a route through the most treacherous parts of the wasteland. The night before their departure, Ethan sought out Rachel. He found her in the corner of the facility, overseeing the distribution of weapons to her followers. She looked up as he approached, her expression unreadable. "What do you want, Ethan?" she asked, her tone clipped. "I wanted to say goodbye," he replied, "and to ask if you'll reconsider. We stand a better chance together than divided." Rachel shook her head, her gaze hardening. "I made my choice. You made yours." "Good. Luck finding your paradise. It won't matter if the Curators wipe us all out anyway." Her words stung, but Ethan didn't argue. Instead, he offered a curt nod and walked away. As he prepared for bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel's decision would haunt them all. The next morning, the team set out at dawn. The air was crisp, and the sky was a pale gray, streaked with faint traces of sunlight struggling to break through the haze. Alien plants swayed gently in the breeze, their bioluminescent glow casting an eerie light over the landscape. Ahead of them lay uncertainty and the hope of salvation. As they moved deeper into the ruins, Ethan glanced at the book tucked safely in Clara's backpack. Whatever secrets it held, he knew they were running out of time to uncover them. The fate of humanity depended on their success or failure. And as the horizon stretched endlessly before them, Ethan realized that the hardest part of their journey was just beginning. The journey to find the enclave was grueling from the start. Each step felt heavier than the last, not just because of the weight of their packs, but also because of the constant threat looming over them. The alien landscape was unpredictable, twisted. Vines that seemed alive writhed across their path, and strange insect-like creatures scuttled in the shadows, watching with glowing eyes. Every sound made Ethan tense, his hand hovering near the knife strapped to his belt. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. Clara carried the book carefully, wrapped in a tattered cloth to protect it from the elements. She glanced at it often, her brow furrowed as she tried to decipher more clues from its shifting text. "It's like the book knows where we're going," she said one evening, as they set up camp beneath the skeletal remains of an old highway overpass. "The symbols change depending on our direction. If we veer off course, they dim, but when we head toward the mountains..." Her voice trailed off as she traced a glowing line on one of its pages. "They brighten." Liam crouched nearby, sharpening the blade of his hunting knife against a stone. That's great and all, but how do we know this isn't leading us into a trap? For all we know, the Curators planted this thing to lure us out. Ethan nodded, acknowledging the risk. We don't. But staying behind wasn't an option either. At least this way we have a chance. Anna, the medic, sat quietly by the fire, stitching a tear in her jacket. She looked up, her green eyes reflecting the flickering flames. Do you think the Enclave is real? Or is it just another story people tell themselves to keep hope alive? It has to be real, Clara replied firmly, though there was a hint of doubt in her voice. If it's not, then what are we even fighting for? No one answered. The question hung in the air, unanswered but impossible to ignore. By the third day, the terrain grew rougher. Jagged cliffs rose around them, their surfaces covered in alien moss that glowed faintly in the dark. The air smelled metallic, sharp and unnatural, making it hard to breathe deeply. Ben, the young engineer, stumbled frequently, his glasses fogging up in the humid conditions. Despite his struggles, he refused to slow the group down, tinkering with pieces of scavenged tech during breaks. As they climbed higher into the mountains, Liam spotted something unusual, a series of tall, spire-like structures jutting out of the ground like broken teeth. They weren't natural formations. Their smooth obsidian surfaces gleamed unnaturally under the pale sunlight. Curator tech, he muttered, motioning for the others to stay low. Stay quiet. These things usually mean trouble. Ethan scanned the area, his pulse quickening. Sure enough, drones patrolled the perimeter, their movements fluid and mechanical. Their bodies shimmered as if cloaked in liquid metal, and their limbs ended in razor-sharp claws designed for precision and destruction. Ethan signaled for the group to retreat, but before they could move, one of the drones tilted its head sharply as if sensing their presence. "Run!" Ethan shouted, grabbing Clara's arm and pulling her back toward the rocks. The others scattered, diving for cover as the drone emitted a high-pitched whine. Moments later, two more appeared, flanking the first. Their red sensors locked onto the fleeing humans, and they gave chase without hesitation. The team sprinted through the uneven terrain, dodging fallen boulders and slippery patches of alien moss. Anna tripped, crying out as she fell, but Ben grabbed her hand and yanked her to her feet. Behind them, the drones closed the distance, their claws slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. "We can't outrun them," Clara yelled, clutching the book tightly to her chest. "We need to lose them." "There." Liam pointed to a narrow crevice between two massive boulders. "Get inside." One by one, they squeezed through the gap, pressing themselves against the cold stone walls. As the drones hovered outside, the machines paused, their sensors scanning the entrance, but they couldn't fit through the tight space. After several tense minutes, they turned and glided away, their whirring sounds fading into the distance. The group slumped to the ground, gasping for breath. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead, his heart still racing. "That was too close," he said, his voice hoarse. "We need to be smarter about avoiding them." Clara nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she checked the book for damage. Thankfully, it was unharmed. "At least we're still on track," she said, pointing to a map she had sketched based on the book's symbols. "If we keep heading northwest, we should reach the valley tomorrow." The next morning brought new challenges. As they descended into a wide basin surrounded by towering peaks, the air grew colder, biting at their exposed skin. Strange noises echoed through the canyon, low hums and distant clicks that sent shivers down their spines. Ethan kept watch, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. Then they saw it, a break in the alien vegetation, revealing a lush green valley nestled between the mountains. It was breathtakingly beautiful, almost surreal compared to the desolation surrounding it. Trees with broad leaves swayed gently in the breeze, and a crystal-clear stream wound its way through the landscape. Most importantly, there were no signs of curator influence, no glowing plants, no biomechanical constructs, nothing but pure, untouched nature. "This has to be it," Clara whispered, her voice filled with awe. The Enclave. But as they approached, their relief turned to unease. Standing at the edge of the valley was a figure dressed in tattered clothes, holding a rifle aimed squarely at them. Behind him, more figures emerged from the trees, each armed and wary. "Who are you?" the man called out, his tone sharp and distrustful. "What do you want here?" Ethan raised his hand slowly, signaling for the others to do the same. "We're survivors," he said, keeping his voice calm. "We came looking for sanctuary. We mean no harm." The man studied them for a moment, his gaze lingering on the book in Clara's hands. "That thing, it's tied to the Curators, isn't it?" Clara hesitated before nodding. "Yes, but we're trying to use it against them, to stop them." The man lowered his weapon slightly, though his expression remained guarded. "You'd better come with us. The elders will decide what to do with you." They followed the strangers into the valley, where rows of makeshift shelters stood among the trees. Children played nearby, laughing and chasing each other, while adults worked together to tend crops and repair equipment. It was a stark contrast to the chaos and fear that defined life outside the enclave. Despite the warmth of the community, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The elders, a group of older men and women with weathered faces, listened intently as Ethan explained their mission. When he finished, one of them, a woman named Evelyn, spoke up. "You've taken a great risk coming here," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "This place has been hidden for years, protected by geography and secrecy. If the Curators discover us—" "They won't," Ethan assured her. "Not unless we fail." Evelyn exchanged glances with the other elders before nodding. "Well, you may stay for now, but understand this. If you bring danger to our doorstep, we will defend ourselves even if it means turning you away." The team accepted the terms gratefully, settling into the rhythm of life in the enclave. Over the next few days, Clara worked tirelessly to decode more of the book, sharing her findings with the elders. They revealed that the enclave had once been part of a larger network of resistance groups working to undermine the Curators' control. However, most of those groups had been wiped out, leaving the enclave isolated and vulnerable. Meanwhile, Liam explored the valley, mapping potential escape routes in case they needed to flee quickly. Ben repaired old radios and generators, hoping to establish communication with other survivors. And Ethan spent hours talking to Evelyn and the other elders, learning everything he could about the Curators' weaknesses. But tensions simmered beneath the surface. Some members of the enclave distrusted the newcomers, fearing they would attract unwanted attention. Others believed the book was too dangerous to keep, arguing that it should be destroyed. Ethan knew he had to act fast before the situation spiraled out of control. One night, as the group gathered around a small fire, Clara held up the book, its symbols glowing softly in the darkness. "I think I figured out how to disable the Curators' nodes," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "If we can target specific locations marked in the book, we might be able to disrupt their terraforming process long enough to strike back." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. "It's risky, but it could work. We'll need volunteers and weapons." Liam leaned forward, his expression grim. "Count me in. If this is our shot, we can't waste it." Anna and Ben agreed, their resolve strengthening as they realized the stakes. Together they began planning their attack, knowing it would require precision, courage, and sacrifice. As dawn broke over the valley, Ethan gazed at the peaceful scene before him, wondering if it might be the last time he saw it. The enclave offered hope, a glimpse of what humanity could become if given the chance to rebuild. But protecting that future meant facing the greatest threat they'd ever known. And so, with heavy hearts and determination etched into their faces, the team prepared to leave the safety of the enclave behind. Whatever lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain: failure was not an option. The team left the enclave at dawn, their packs heavy with supplies and makeshift weapons. The valley behind them seemed impossibly peaceful, a sharp contrast to the alien wasteland they now entered. Ethan glanced back one last time, his heart heavy with the knowledge that they might never return. Clara walked beside him, clutching the book tightly as if it were a lifeline. Liam led the way, his movements cautious but deliberate, scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. As they moved deeper into the alien-infested terrain, the air grew colder, tinged with the metallic scent of Curator technology. The ground beneath their feet was uneven, littered with shards of broken metal and strange, pulsating plants that seemed to watch them. Every step felt like walking through a minefield, each sound amplified in the eerie silence. They knew the Curators were out there, watching, waiting. It was only a matter of time before they struck. Clara's voice broke the tension. According to the book, the nearest node is about 10 miles north of here, she said, her tone steady despite the fear in her eyes. If we can disable it, it should weaken their control over this region. Ethan nodded, gripping the hilt of his knife. Let's focus on getting there first. Once we're close, we'll figure out how to take it down. Anna, the medic, adjusted the strap of her bag, her face pale but determined. What happens if we fail? If the Curators catch us? We don't have room for failure, Ethan replied bluntly. If we don't stop them, there won't be an enclave or any safe place left. The group pressed on, navigating through narrow ravines and dense clusters of alien vegetation. Ben, the young engineer, tinkered with a small device he'd cobbled together from scavenged parts. This should help us locate the node, he explained, holding up the gadget. Its screen flickered weakly, displaying a faint signal. It's picking up some kind of energy reading. We're getting closer. By midday, they reached the edge of a wide plain, dominated by a towering structure that looked like a fusion of organic and mechanical elements. Its surface shimmered with iridescent hues, and tendrils of light pulsed rhythmically across its form. At its base, drones patrolled tirelessly, their red sensors scanning the area for intruders. This is it, Clara whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the structure. The node. Liam crouched behind a rock, studying the layout, carefully. There are too many drones, he muttered. We'll never make it past them without being spotted. Ethan frowned, his mind racing. We need a distraction, something to draw them away long enough for us to get inside. Ben raised his hand hesitantly. I might have an idea. That device I made, it can emit a signal similar to the ones the Curators use. If I tweak it, I could create a false energy spike. Maybe it'll lure some of the drones away. Do it, Ethan said without hesitation. But hurry. We don't have much time. While Ben worked on modifying the device, the rest of the team prepared for the assault. Anna handed out crude explosives fashioned from scavenged materials, explaining how to use them effectively. Aim for the joints, she instructed. That's where their armor is weakest. Clara opened the book again, tracing glowing symbols with her fingers. Her expression darkened as she deciphered fragments of text. The node isn't just a machine, she said quietly. It's tied to the Curators themselves, part of their collective consciousness. Disabling it might hurt them directly. Ethan met her gaze, understanding the gravity of what she was saying. Then we do whatever it takes. When Ben finished modifying the device, he placed it on a nearby ridge and activated it. A low-frequency pulse emitted from the gadget, creating a ripple of energy visible to the drones. Several of them immediately turned toward the source, abandoning their posts to investigate. The team seized the opportunity, slipping past the distracted machines and heading straight for the node. Inside, the structure was even stranger than it appeared from the outside. Walls of shifting, semi-liquid metal surrounded them, and the air vibrated with an unsettling hum. Strange symbols floated in the air, glowing faintly as they passed. Clara consulted the book, guiding the group deeper into the labyrinthine interior. This way, she said, pointing to a corridor bathed in blue light. The core should be just ahead. They reached a massive chamber dominated by a pulsating orb suspended in the center. Tendrils of energy snaked outward from it, connecting to smaller nodes embedded in the walls. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying, a glimpse into the heart of the Curator's power. That's the main node, Clara confirmed, her voice trembling. Destroying it will disrupt their system, but it won't be easy. Before anyone could respond, the hum around them grew louder, and the walls began to shift. Drones poured into the chamber, surrounding them on all sides. Their claws clicked, menacingly, and their red sensors locked onto the intruders. "Now what?" Liam shouted, drawing his knife. Ethan stepped forward, his voice firm despite the chaos. "We fight our way through. Clara, you focus on disabling the node. The rest of us will hold them off." Without hesitation, the team sprang into action. Anna hurled one of the explosives at a cluster of drones, the blast sending shards of metal flying. Liam darted between the machines, striking with precision and speed. Ben used the modified device to overload another group of drones, causing them to collapse in a shower of sparks. Meanwhile, Clara approached the orb, her hands trembling. As she opened the book, she traced glowing symbols onto its surface, her movements frantic but deliberate. The orb reacted violently, pulsing with erratic bursts of light. Alarms blared throughout the chamber, and more drones swarmed in, overwhelming the defenders. Ethan fought desperately, his knife slicing through the air as he fended off attackers. His body ached and his vision blurred, but he refused to give up. "Clara!" he yelled. "How much longer?" "Almost there," she shouted back, her voice strained. Sweat dripped from her forehead as she worked feverishly to complete the sequence. Suddenly, a drone lunged at her, its claws inches from her face. Before it could strike, Liam tackled it to the ground, driving his blade into its core. The machine sputtered and collapsed, giving Clara precious seconds to finish her task. With a final touch, the orb erupted in a burst of light, sending shock waves rippling through the chamber. The drones froze mid-motion, their systems overloaded by the sudden disruption. One by one, they fell silent, collapsing into lifeless heaps of metal. The team regrouped, panting and battered, but alive. Clara staggered back, clutching the book to her chest. "It's done," she gasped. "The node is disabled." But their victory was short-lived. As they turned to leave, the ground beneath them began to quake. Cracks spread across the walls, and chunks of debris rained down from above. The destruction of the node had destabilized the entire structure, and it was collapsing. "Move!" Ethan ordered, leading the charge toward the exit. They sprinted through the crumbling corridors, dodging falling debris and narrowly avoiding death at every turn. Just as they reached the outer doors, a massive explosion rocked the building, sending them sprawling onto the ground. When the dust settled, they looked back to see the node reduced to a smoldering ruin. The landscape around them seemed different. The alien plants wilted, their glow fading into dullness. For the first time in years, the oppressive presence of the Curators felt diminished. Exhausted but triumphant, the team limped back toward the Enclave, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. They had struck a blow against the invaders, proving that humanity still had a fighting chance. Back at the Enclave, news of their success spread quickly. Evelyn and the elders greeted them with gratitude, though their joy was tempered by caution. "You've bought us time," Evelyn said, her voice filled with admiration. "But this war is far from over." Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "We've shown them we can fight back. Now we need to prepare for what comes next." As the sun set over the valley, Ethan sat alone by the stream, staring at the water. The weight of their mission rested heavily on his shoulders, but for the first time in months he allowed himself a moment of hope. The Enclave was safe. For now. And as long as there were people willing to stand against the Curators, humanity would endure. Clara joined him, sitting quietly beside him. "What happens next?" she asked softly. "We rebuild," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "We reclaim what they've taken, and we rise again." Together, they watched the stars appear in the night sky, a reminder that even in the darkest times, light could still shine through. The victory at the node was bittersweet. Though they had dealt a significant blow to the Curators, the cost of their success weighed heavily on the team. Each step back toward the Enclave felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of what they had done and what still lay ahead was pressing down on them. Ethan's body ached from the fight and his mind raced with thoughts of the future. Clara walked silently beside him, her face pale but resolute. Liam brought up the rear, scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. When they finally reached the valley, the sight of the enclave brought a small measure of relief. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the sound of children laughing echoed faintly in the distance. It was a stark contrast to the desolation they had left behind. Yet as they approached, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their brief moment of peace would not last long. Evelyn and the elders greeted them, warmly though their expressions betrayed concern. "You've done something remarkable," Evelyn said, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "But the curators will not take this lightly. They'll retaliate, and when they do, we need to be ready." Ethan nodded, his jaw tightening. "We disabled one node, but there are more out there. If we want to reclaim Earth, we'll need to strike at all of them. And fast." Clara stepped forward, holding the book tightly. "This can help us find the other nodes," she said. "But it's going to take time to decode everything. We'll need everyone's help." The elders exchanged glances, their faces filled with both hope and doubt. "Our people are willing to fight," Evelyn replied. "But we can't risk losing this place. If the curators discover us—" "They won't," Ethan interrupted firmly. "Not if we stay ahead of them. We've shown we can hit them where it hurts. Now we need to organize, gather resources, and prepare for the next attack." Over the following days, the Enclave transformed into a hub of activity. Ben worked tirelessly to repair old communication devices, hoping to establish contact with other survivors scattered across the planet. Anna trained volunteers in basic combat and first aid, preparing them for the battles to come. Liam scouted the surrounding area, mapping potential escape routes and identifying weak points in the Curators' defenses. Meanwhile, Clara pored over the book, deciphering its shifting symbols and piecing together a map of the remaining nodes. Ethan took on the role of leader, coordinating efforts and ensuring everyone stayed focused. He held meetings with the elders and representatives from the community, discussing strategies and addressing concerns. Some were hesitant, worried about the risks involved in taking the fight to the curators. Others were eager to act, fueled by anger and desperation. Ethan listened to both sides, trying to find a balance between caution and boldness. One evening, as the group gathered around a fire, Rachel Morgan appeared unexpectedly. She stood at the edge of the clearing, her blonde hair tied back and her arms crossed. Her presence sent a ripple of tension through the crowd. "What are you doing here?" Ethan asked, his voice measured but wary. Rachel stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "I heard about what you did," she said. "About the node. You think you've made a difference, but you're just delaying the inevitable." Ethan frowned. "We've weakened them. That's more than anyone else has." "Managed." Rachel shook her head. "And how many lives did it cost? How much blood is on your hands? You talk about unity, but all you've done is divide us even further." Her words struck a nerve, but Ethan didn't rise to the bait. "If you have a better plan, I'm listening." Rachel hesitated, then glanced at the others watching silently. "Fine, but don't expect me to follow blindly. My people will decide for themselves whether to join your little rebellion." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving an uneasy silence in her wake. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. He knew Rachel's distrust ran deep, and convincing her to cooperate wouldn't be easy, but he also knew they couldn't afford to let divisions weaken their cause. As preparations continued, Clara made a breakthrough. "I've found something important," she announced during one of their strategy meetings. She spread a map on the table, marked with glowing symbols. "These aren't just locations of nodes. They're connected. If we disable enough of them in sequence, we might be able to shut down the entire network." Ethan studied the map carefully. "That's risky. Hitting multiple targets at once means splitting our forces. If one group fails—" "We don't have a choice," Clara insisted. "This could be our only chance to cripple the curators completely." After much debate, they decided to move forward with the plan. Teams were formed, each tasked with targeting a specific node. Ethan led the largest group, heading straight for the central hub, the heart of the Curators' system. Clara accompanied him, determined to see the mission through to the end. Liam volunteered to lead a smaller team to sabotage a secondary node, while Ben and Anna coordinated support operations from the Enclave. The night before the final assault, Ethan found himself sitting alone by the stream. The water reflected the stars above, twinkling faintly in the darkness. He thought about everything they had been through, the sacrifices, the losses, the moments of hope amidst despair. A part of him wondered if they were truly ready for what lay ahead. But another part, deeper and more stubborn, refused to give up. Clara joined him, sitting quietly beside him. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders," she said softly. "Maybe I am," Ethan admitted. "What if we fail? What if this isn't enough?" Clara placed a hand on his arm. "We've come too far to give up now. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll face it together." Ethan nodded, drawing strength from her words. Together, the next morning the team set out at dawn. The air was cold and the sky was overcast, casting a gray pall over the alien landscape. As they moved toward their objectives, the tension was palpable. Every step felt like walking into the unknown, each breath a reminder of what was at stake. Ethan's group reached the central hub without incident, thanks to Liam's careful planning and Clara's precise navigation. The structure loomed before them, larger and more imposing than any they had encountered before. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly glow, and tendrils of energy pulsed rhythmically across its form. Drones patrolled the perimeter, their movements sharp and mechanical. "This is it," Clara whispered, clutching the book tightly. "The heart of their system." Ethan turned to the team, his voice firm. "Stay focused. We get in, disable the core, and get out. No matter what happens, stick to the plan." They moved quickly, using smoke bombs crafted by Anna to create distractions. The drones faltered momentarily, giving them enough time to slip inside. The interior was a maze of shifting walls and glowing symbols, disorienting and unnerving. Clara led the way, her fingers tracing patterns in the air as she followed the book's guidance. When they reached the core chamber, they froze. Suspended in the center was a massive orb, pulsating with light so intense it hurt to look at directly. Tendrils of energy snaked outward, connecting it to countless smaller nodes embedded in the walls. The hum of power vibrated through the room, almost deafening. "That's it," Clara said, her voice trembling. "Destroy that, and we shut them down." Before they could act, the doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. Alarms blared and drones poured into the chamber, surrounding them on all sides. Ethan drew his knife, his heart pounding. "Clara, do what you need to do. We'll hold them off." The team fought fiercely, fending off wave after wave of attackers. Anna hurled explosives, creating bursts of flame that sent drones crashing to the ground. Liam darted between enemies, striking with precision and speed. Meanwhile, Clara worked frantically, tracing glowing symbols onto the orb's surface. The orb reacted violently, pulsing erratically and sending shockwaves rippling through the chamber. The drones froze mid-motion, their systems overloaded by the sudden disruption. One by one, they collapsed into lifeless heaps of metal. With a final touch, the orb erupted in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet and the walls began to crumble. The team scrambled toward the exit, narrowly avoiding death as the structure collapsed behind them. When they emerged into the sunlight, the landscape was transformed. Alien plants wilted and died, their glow fading into dullness. The oppressive presence of the Curators was gone, replaced by an eerie silence. For the first time in years, Earth felt free. Back at the Enclave, celebrations broke out as news of their success spread. Evelyn embraced Ethan, tears streaming down her face. "You've done it," she said. "You've given us a chance to rebuild." But Ethan knew the road ahead would not be easy. The scars left by the Curators ran deep and healing would take time. As he looked out over the valley, he realized that survival was only the beginning. The real challenge lay in rebuilding a world fractured by fear and mistrust. Clara stood beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "We've reclaimed our home," she said softly. "Now it's time to rise again." And as the sun set over the horizon, Ethan allowed himself a moment of quiet hope. Together they would forge a new future, one defined not by despair but by resilience and determination.